Hello my friends, and welcome back to another video. Today is part 2 of the series that I have been doing this October for you all. The first part was reading your scariest book recommendations, and in this one, I'm going to be reading the internet's scariest book recommendations. So basically, I'm taking it back to what I used to do very early on into my YouTube days, which is I would Google scariest horror books ever, find lists, and try to read the books on them and see if they were actually scary. So that is what I did for this vlog. It was a lot harder than it used to be for me because when I tell you I looked through a lot of lists, I mean I looked through a lot of lists. The problem was that a lot of the books on those lists were books I already had read. So it took me a really long time to find a list that I felt like had a good kind of amount of books that I could pick that I hadn't read and that I kind of owned or were easily accessible to me. So it took a while, but I did find a list. So this article was from Esquire. I know nothing about Esquire. I literally don't even know really what it is. It's just a list that I clicked on. It had books that I hadn't read yet, and so I was like, okay, well, this is the one that is going to be the one that I use. But it's called The 50 Best Horror Books of All Time Will Scare You by Neil McRobert, and it was published May 9th of 2022. I'll have it linked down below if you want to look at the list and see all the other books, but there were a lot that I had read on this list and I had to kind of just find ones that I could use. So the 4 books that I will be reading are primarily from that list. One book I did sneak in for this vlog because I just wanted to read it and everyone had been talking about how scary it was. It kind of fit with the internet's scariest book recommendations theme. So let me show you the books that I will be reading in this vlog. Up first, we have The Auctioneer by Joan Sampson. This is a Paperbacks from Hell. I've actually had this on my TBR for a while now. I picked it up when I was getting into Paperbacks from Hell and I wanted to read more of them, so I decided to pick this one up. Luckily, this one was on the list, so I went ahead and decided to use it for the video. The next book is one that I've heard a lot of people talking about and it's been on my radar for a while, so I decided that it would be the perfect opportunity to read it, and that is The House Next Door by Anne Rivers Siddons. And this is like a haunted house story, so I was really excited to include this one. And then we have, of course, a classic, and that is Ring by Koji Suzuki. Again, a book that has been on my radar for such a long time. I've been meaning to read this for as long as I knew that The Ring was a book, so I am really excited to have included this one in the vlog. And the last book that I kind of cheated with because it wasn't on the list, but everyone's been talking about it, so I decided that I could sneak it in with this vlog and it would still count, and that's Boys in the Valley by Philip Fracassi. Everyone has been raving about this book for a while now and talking about how it is so scary, so I decided to pick it up because when someone says that it's a scary book, I want to find out for myself. So this is the 4th and final book that I will be reading in this vlog. Alright, so now that I have introduced the books and I've told you what we are doing in this second part, I guess the only thing left to do is read the books and talk about them. So let's get into it. Hello friends, and welcome to the first update. So I am currently in the middle of The Auctioneer by Joan Samson. I'm gonna be honest, I don't really like this book at all. I'm almost done with it. I'm trying to power through it. I'm on page 161 and I'm just trying to get this book over with because I really don't care for it. But this book is about the Moore family, and they live in this town named Harlow, New Hampshire, and the plot is really simple. There's not much to it. Basically, this new guy named Pearly comes to town. He's an auctioneer. The Moores get asked for some things to auction one day, but then these people just keep coming back for more and more and more things to auction, and basically they just can't say no. People start getting injured. It's just a whole weird mess. So this is supposed to be a slow burn, building of tension kind of vibe. I don't know. I find it super boring. It's super uninteresting. I don't feel any tension. I don't feel any threat. I don't feel worried for these people. Honestly, I think the book is kind of ridiculous. I think the plot is just one of those over the top plots. I know this was written in the 70s, so I'm trying to be ah yes, this would be probably very horrific back then. The problem is I'm reading it now in 2023 with my knowledge of all the horror books that I've read, and this just doesn't add up to a lot of books that I've read. This is just really, really, really boring, honestly, and I don't care about any of the characters. Like I said, I think the plot is kind of ridiculous. I think it's kind of dumb. It feels like this would never happen. I'm sorry. I don't find it believable in the slightest. I don't find it to be scary or horrific. I mean, I guess, but again, it's so over the top and ridiculous that I can't really take it seriously. So I think that's my problem. It's very similar to Needful Things by Stephen King. So if you've read that, then you kind of know what's going on. It's similar. Needful Things is actually one of my favorite books by Stephen King. It's one of the few books that I actually have enjoyed from him as an author. So for me, this just doesn't really add up. I feel like it's not really comparable to Needful Things. So yeah, I'm just trying to read this as fast as humanly possible because I really just don't care at all. At least it's short. I think it's only 260 pages, so at least it's going by fast. But yeah, this is so extremely boring that I really just have to fight to stay awake while reading it and fight to find some care about this book. So, off to a mediocre start so far, but I am going to try to finish this today. I have movie night with my patrons here in just a few minutes, so I won't be reading anytime soon, but afterwards I will be reading this, hopefully finishing it, and then starting something else because I just want to move from this extremely, extremely quickly. Hello friends! So I did in fact finish The Auctioneer yesterday, and I really have nothing to say about this book, mainly because it was so boring. I found the writing to be dry, the characters are dry and bland, and I had really no interest in the plot at all. There was no tension, it wasn't scary, it was just ridiculous. It felt really over the top in a boring way, which I know probably doesn't make sense, but it's over the top in the sense that the situation feels so unrealistic, and there are realistic parts to some of the things, but I feel like the overall situation that is happening to the characters is just so unreal and unlikely to happen that I couldn't even feel any worry for the characters or any Again, I wasn't nervous, I didn't have any tension, like I didn't feel anything. I didn't care about these characters. I really hated the husband, John. He was really irritating. I couldn't stand him. He annoyed me every 5 seconds. I thought he was like super stupid. I think this might work for people who like quiet horror, but this is like quiet to the point of there's literally nothing happening. Maybe the atmosphere should have been more tense, I guess. I don't know, but nothing really happened. I just didn't have any emotion towards this book at all. The ending was anticlimactic. I mean, nothing really happened, to be honest. I wasn't shocked by the ending. I wasn't surprised by the ending. I was just kind of like really bored and ready for this book to end because I was so annoyed and bored and I just didn't care. I'm so sorry. I know a lot of people love this book. I know that this is obviously like a well-loved book. That's why it was on the list, but I just didn't care. This is probably getting 2 stars for me because honestly, I just wanted it to be over, and it was very short. It was only over like a little over 200 pages. So for me to like actively want a book to be over quickly when it's that short is not a good sign. This was a miss for me, a big miss. I just didn't care for it. I didn't like it. So the next book I am currently working on, The House Next Door by Anne Rivers Siddons, I think is how you say this author's name. I'm not sure at all. This is like a haunted house story. I'm not that far into it. It's like, I think I'm like 15% in, but this is about the 2 characters. They're married, Colquitt and Walter, which I think is how you say her name, Colquitt. I'm not really sure. That's a very interesting name that I've never seen before. So they live in like this beautiful neighborhood. It's like picturesque and peaceful, and they basically just like love their life. Like they're having a great life. They're live, laugh, loving. They're just having a great time. Then these new people buy the lot next door to them and begin construction on a new house. And I guess bad things are gonna happen. The house is gonna be haunted. I don't know. I don't know much about this. I believe this was published in the 90s. Yeah, I love a haunted house story, so that's always great. The writing's fine. Like it's easy to read. I feel like I'm not having any trouble with it. It's good. Like I'm interested in the story. I feel like I'm not like bored or anything, but again, I'm only 15% in, so I don't really know if I would have that many problems right now, but we'll see. I'm gonna keep reading it and hopefully finish it soon. It shouldn't be that long to finish because it's only over like 330 pages or something. So yeah, don't have many thoughts on it because nothing's really happened. But from what I've read, it seems interesting. I'm looking forward to the haunting part, seeing what that's like. It's much better than The Auctioneer so far, so that's a plus for me because couldn't stand that book. Don't even want to talk about it anymore. But that's pretty much all I have to update on because I don't have many thoughts. Both the books so far have been really like, they don't have a lot to talk about, I guess. So yeah, I'm gonna keep reading The House Next Door and I'll let you know what I think when I get somewhere, maybe when I finish it. I have no idea, but I will update you and hopefully I'll have more to talk about. Hello friends and welcome to another check-in. So yesterday I finished The House Next Door and I actually did like and enjoy this story. It's not at all what I expected it to be. I think I went in with the expectation that it was like a major haunted house story, and I would say the haunted house elements are way lighter than typical haunted house stories. I feel like it is a main focal point, but I feel like they're not very in your face. A lot of the like elements that are used to show that the house is haunted, it's just a lot it's a lot more of a quiet kind of horror, I guess. I do think the story is really interesting in the fact that the main characters are experiencing the haunting from next door. They are not the ones living in the house, which is typically what you see when you read haunted house stories. I feel like that's pretty typical, but I do think it's interesting that it was just the house next door and they were being affected by it, but just in a much different manner than I think that main characters would experience the hauntings. This book does have quite a bit of animal death, and the R slur was used once in this story. I wasn't super surprised to see it actually, because it was written in the 90s. I feel like this book does have that like 90s cheesy quality to it, and to me the horror, like I said, is much quieter. I kind of felt like a lot of the book was more of a drama, like like neighborhood drama, relationship drama, life drama, that kind of thing. And there were some like good horror elements. They're just super minor and like they're not really ramped up, and I feel like a lot of people will go into a book like this expecting a haunted house story, and the haunted house story is just not what people are going to typically find, especially nowadays. I feel like the haunted house stories we see now are way different than this, but it was still fun. It was an easy read. It wasn't like too hard. It was just kind of like a palate cleanser, I guess. It wasn't, I don't know, I just didn't have to think too hard about it. It was easy like writing to get into. The characters were really interesting and kind of like silly. Like some of the things they did, I was just like, oh my god. So that was kind of fun, and it just kind of felt over dramatic. Like I said, it felt like a drama. Like there was just a lot of stuff happening and the characters just like talking about certain things and doing certain things, and yeah, I don't know, it felt a lot like kind of a drama like thriller, a little bit like thrillery, because to me it didn't feel like hardcore horror. I feel like this is like super quiet horror, not gonna be in your face at all, but it was enjoyable. I did like it. I'd probably give it like 4 stars. I don't think it's scary. I don't think a lot of people are gonna think it's scary, but it was fun and it was enjoyable to read. It wasn't like anything, you know, crazy, and the ending kind of made me laugh. It was kind of a funny ending. I wasn't super shocked by it, but I also thought it was just kind of one of those like ironic, like funny endings. I don't know. So I did end up liking this one overall, but definitely not what I expected to get into when I started reading it. So the next book that I have already started, and I'm actually very close to finishing it because it's a quick read, that is Ring by Koji Suzuki. I have been meaning to read this book for so long. I absolutely love Ringu, the Japanese version of the movie. I do like the American remake. It's not my favorite. I feel like a lot of people love it way more than me. I enjoy it. I think I've just seen it a lot when I was younger that it doesn't really get me like it gets some people. So I do like it and I do appreciate it, but it's definitely not one of my favorite horror movies, and I think there are a lot better movies out there compared to The Ring, but I really like the Japanese version a lot. I thought it was really enjoyable, so I've always been looking forward to reading this book. I wanted to know what the differences were. I wanted to see, you know, what had been changed. But if you don't know what this plot is about, I'll give you like a really brief synopsis because this is a popular story. Also, I don't want to go into like too much spoilers about it in case you haven't seen it. So basically the main character, he's a journalist and he starts looking into these mysterious deaths that he thinks are connected. And when he starts looking into them, he finds this videotape and he watches the video, and after the video he discovers he has 7 days to live unless he does something to put a stop to it. So basically you're on the journey of him trying to figure out the story behind the tape and how to put a stop to it. This is very different than the 2 movies that I've seen. One, the main characters in the movies, both the Japanese version and the American version, the main character is a woman. I can definitely see why they made the switch because honestly I can't stand him. I think he's super sexist. I think he's a dick. Like, he's just not like a good character. Like, I really don't care about him. He's really mean to his wife. I just like, I don't like him. Like, I just think he's really aggravating and really stupid. He's joined with help from like his friend, which there is something I want to talk about with his friend. I don't know if it's a spoiler, so I'm going to wait until I finish the book to see if it has any relevance to the plot. I'm assuming it doesn't, because I don't see it having any relevance, but I'm not going to mention it in this update. I'll mention it when I finish the book. But yeah, he's a whole different story. Can't stand him either. It's definitely a quick read. I feel like it's going by really quickly. I believe the book's only 282 pages, and I'm on page 186, and it's going by really fast. So it's a really quick, easy read. I would say that there are a lot of similarities, but now there are a lot of differences to the movie. I want to see how this ends to see what else is different, because I'm not really sure, but the story of Sadako in the book is very different, in my opinion, to the story of her in the Japanese version of the movie and the American version of the movie. So I'm not sure what this ending is gonna be like. So far, I'm enjoying it for the most part. I can't see myself giving this higher than a 3, maybe a 3.5 as of right now. Personally, I would just watch the movies. Honestly, any of the movies. I'd watch the Japanese version. I'd watch the American version. I just found out there was a Korean version. I'd probably watch that instead of reading this one as well. So, like, I don't know. I personally feel like the movie just does a better job of being creepy, and I just like them better. I feel like the book is fine. It's okay. I wouldn't say I'm like extra scared or whatever, but maybe that's also because I know the story really well. That could also be a problem. So I don't know if the level of scariness is also affected because I do know the story very well, even though the story does seem to be getting different, but definitely not scary to me. Maybe if you've never seen the movies, you might find this really, really scary. I'm not sure. It's definitely not one of my favorite Japanese horror novels I've ever read. But, you know, I'm gonna keep reading. I don't have that much longer to get through. So I will finish this and then give you my final thoughts on the book. Hopefully I have something more to say, because that's it for right now. But after this one, we will be on to the 4th and final book. So I will update you when I finish this one. Okay friends, I am back with another check-in. So I did finish Ring last night, and I have to be honest, I'm actually really disappointed with this book. I don't know if it's just because I've seen the movies, plural, multiple, many times, that I just expected the book to be as good as the movies. And honestly, I'm really disappointed. Like, I feel like all the good parts of this book were put into the movies, and all the stupid stuff that are super unnecessary were left out, and that's why the movies are so much better. I would say a lot of the differences between the movies and this book is the background information on Sadako. I feel like that was pretty much the big main difference in my opinion. Honestly, I prefer the backstory for her in the movies. I don't really think the backstory for her works as well in the book. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but to be honest, the stuff that they left out, it just wasn't that important. It wasn't that exciting. I like the movie versions better. I think that they did a better job translating like the scary parts of this book and making them honestly better. Like I said in the last check-in, that the main character, honestly, he's really annoying. He's misogynistic. He's a dick. I don't really care for him. I think they did the smartest option, turning the main character into a woman, because it gets rid of all that junk that he brought to the book. There was something I wanted to mention in the last check-in. I still don't know how I feel about it in terms of being spoilery, so I won't go into like too much detail, but the main character's friend is helping him solve the tape mystery. His name is Ryuji, and he's got issues, and honestly, his past, like the stuff that you learn about him, I really don't know why it's necessary. I really don't know why it was put into the book. I don't know why it's even relevant or talked about, because it has really no relevance to the plot. Like, it doesn't do anything for the plot. It doesn't elevate the plot or anything. It's just there, I guess, to make him a crappy person. It feels like in the end they tried to like give him some redeeming qualities, which I don't really think works out. In my opinion, it's just another horror book written by a man making the male characters do really despicable things to women for like no real reason. I know that's like a big thing in horror, which is obviously been talked about multiple times by many different people, but I don't think it's scary. Again, maybe it could be scary to other people if you've never really seen the movies and you don't really know what to expect. You don't know what you're getting into. I've seen the movies many times, so I know what the story is. Of course, it did surprise me, the background of Sadako. They definitely changed things for the movie. In my opinion, they changed it for the better. So, in my personal opinion, I don't think this book is scary, and I don't actually think it's that great. It's like fine. I could see myself giving it 3. Honestly, it's more probably like a 2.5 star. I'm just probably going to be generous and give it 3 unless I really feel like taking it down to 2.5. I honestly wouldn't recommend reading it. If you want to see or like learn about the story, I just recommend watching the movies. I don't even care if it's like the American remake, the Korean version, the Japanese version, whatever. Any of them have to be better than this book. So personally, I would just skip reading it. I don't think it's necessary to read this. I think you can get the story just fine from the movies, and I think the movies do an even better job at making it scary, and I just prefer them overall. So in this instance, I have to say that the movie is better than the book, because this book it wasn't that great. But moving on, I am on to my last book of the vlog. This is the book that I am technically cheating with because it was not listed in the list that I found online. This one is just the one that everyone's been talking about, so I decided to like sneak it into the vlog, and that is Boys in the Valley by Philip Fracassi. I have already started reading it. I am almost 200 pages in. I think I'm 195, chapter 35, and so far I'm really enjoying it. It says it's like a mix of Lord of the Flies and Children of the Corn, which is pretty much what intrigued me. I didn't really know too much about this book before I bought it, just that everyone has been talking about how scary it is, and that it was like Lord of the Flies and Children of the Corn. So I decided to get it and see what all the hype was about. But in this story, we are following the main character, Peter. He lives at this orphanage, St. Vincent's for boys, and the orphanage is overseen by these priests. And one night, the priests get a knock on the orphanage's doors, and the sheriff is asking for help because they have a sick man. So the priests invite the people in and they try to help him. He has a wound that is very severe, but also he has these like occult symbols like carved into his body, and the priests try to help this man, but he ends up dying. And after his death, things in the orphanage get very interesting, and some of the boys start acting very oddly. So it is kind of funny that I have another Lord of the Flies-esque book in this series. In the vlog that I did before this one, where I read your book recommendations that were scary, I ended up reading Fantasticland, and that is a Lord of the Flies Battle Royale style book, so it is very interesting that I accidentally got two. I did not mean to do that, but I really actually like this story. It's a very, very interesting. I don't know if I would say that it is scaring me. I think that the idea of the book is very scary. I think this would make an excellent movie. I think a lot of people would really love this in movie format. I think it has like all the makings to be like a really good horror movie, but it is a really good book as well. I like the characters a lot. I actually really like the setting. I wasn't sure that I was gonna like the orphanage, but I actually do really like it right now. And it's just a very interesting story. It is very creepy, I will say. There are very creepy instances, and I think the situation as a whole is very terrifying. I think it'll depend on the reader, because I know some people aren't scared of stories like this. It just depends on what you believe and, you know, what kind of things you find scary. But I'm not scared while reading it, so, but I do really enjoy the story. It's reading really quickly and I'm very invested. I want to see where it's going to go. I mean, I have a feeling I know where it's going to go, but I do want to see how it ends. And yeah, I'm enjoying this one. It's really good. I can see why people are talking a lot about it, but I don't think it's like the scariest book I've ever read, so we'll see. I'm gonna finish reading this one and then I will update you all on my final thoughts once I finish this one. Hello friends, and welcome to the last check-in for this reading vlog. Last night I did finish Boys in the Valley and I really liked this book. I can see why everyone's talking about it. I do really get the hype now that I've finished it. It's so funny because in my last vlog, the last book I read was my favorite and it was Fantasticland, and in this one's my favorite, and they kind of have a similar thing going on. It's that Lord of the Flies Battle Royale style thing, and I feel like, I guess I'm just really drawn to that sort of book. I don't know, because I love the Hunger Games, I really loved Battle Royale, I liked Fantasticland a lot, I liked this. I mean, they're all very different, but they all have like a lot of similarities, and I guess I'm just drawn to this style. I don't know. I don't know if it has something to do with me like loving the Hunger Games when I was younger, that it's like bled into my adult life and now books that are similar I just gravitate towards, but so weird that that happened. It was a total accident, but I guess it makes sense for my reading taste now. I don't have a lot of criticisms about this book. One thing I wish had been different was I feel like the beginning was a little slow compared to the second half of the book. I wish that a lot of stuff that happened in the second half, especially like the big stuff at the end of the book, had kind of been spread out throughout the entire book. So it would have been a little bit more tense. We would have had a little bit more tension. I'm not saying that there wasn't tension in this book. It was very tense to read and I was very like anxious during my reading experience, but I just think it would have been elevated a little bit more had things been sprinkled throughout a little more evenly. And the second thing is gonna be honestly just personal opinion and personal preference, but the ending to this is really sad and really bleak. And I know a lot of people love bleak horror endings, and I do too. It has to happen in a certain way, and for me, this was like a little too gut-wrenching. I was a little too sad. This book made me cry a little bit. I did cry like several times while reading this book, but the ending, oh my god, I was so mad when I finished, and I do understand the reasoning for this ending, and I do think the ending works. It's just really sad, which sounds so stupid because it's a horror book, but I think I'm just one of those people who I really like hopeful endings, which I know is like an oxymoron because I read horror. I just like a little bright, hopeful ending. Even if it's not totally like happy, I just like a little something. Not all the time. I do like bleak, depressing, sad endings. I think just in cases like this where I get really attached to characters and I get really like emotional towards them, it makes it more impactful, which I know is the point, but it just hurts a lot more for me. I'm trying not to hold that against the book because I do think the ending really worked. And even though I'm sad about it, I did like it. And I don't think it ruined my overall enjoyment of the book. It kind of reminds me of Battle Royale. The ending to Battle Royale really hurt my feelings, but I still really loved Battle Royale. So I'm trying to like compare it to that because I feel like they're very similar. So I'm trying to like not be too mad at the ending because I do think it was good. It was really sad and it like hit me really hard, which I'm sure that was the point, and it was obviously very successful. I think that if you're someone who really enjoys religious horror, if that is something that kind of like scares you or intrigues you, or you just find yourself gravitating towards it a lot, you like coming of age horror, I think this is definitely a book that would be for you. Those are two things that I tend to really enjoy. Coming of age is kind of hit or miss sometimes, but I think in this instance it worked really well, and the religious horror was really great. I think it was a very classic story. I think a lot of people will enjoy this one, which obviously they are because this book has been getting rave reviews for the last, I don't know, however long I've been seeing this book everywhere. This does have a little bit of animal death in it, so be mindful of that. As for my rating, I'm very unsure right now. I want to give it a 5-star, but I'm really between a 4.5 and a 5. I feel like it's not a 4.5, but I feel like it's kind of like a low 5-star, and I'm just hesitant about it. I think it's just because of the two things I mentioned. One, the ending, and then two, that I wish it had been sprinkled a little bit more throughout. But I feel like those two things I don't hate or I'm not mad enough about, even though this ending is, you know, really depressing and really hurt my feelings. I feel like I still really liked the book overall. I felt it was a really easy read. The chapters went by really fast, and I just think it did a really good job of being a successful horror book. So I want to give it 5 stars. So I think I might. I don't know. I could change my mind. I'm between a 4.5 and a 5. And then the last thing, did I find this book scary? And I think the idea of it, to me, is very scary, especially the addition of the religious horror, but that's going to depend on, you know, personal opinion. I know not everyone finds those types of stories scary, but to me, I do. So this situation, to me, along with like the Lord of the Flies setup, I found those two components really very scary. I wouldn't say I was scared while reading the book, more like I was very tense and anxious and worried about the characters. Basically how I was when I was reading Battle Royale or like The Hunger Games. So I feel like that was successful then for me. That's as close as I've been able to get. I feel like those are most of the feelings that I can get out of myself now when I'm reading a horror book. So I would say that for me, this one was the scariest. Alright, my friends, that is it. This is part 2 of my little series for October. I have to say that I wasn't as excited about this second half because I thought it was going to be more disappointing, which we did have 2 really like not good books for me, and then 2 that I actually did enjoy, which I feel like kind of matches with the first half of this series. So kind of weird how this balanced out, but I'm really happy. I'm glad that I got to read these books and give them a try. I hope you all enjoyed watching me read them and enjoyed hearing my thoughts on all of these. You'll have to let me know if you agree or disagree on any of these books. I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and you would like to see some something like this in the future, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. That way I know and I can start prepping things, getting things together, maybe coming up with some different ideas, and that way I can, you know, create videos like this for you all. If you haven't already, feel free to subscribe to my channel. I also have a Patreon linked down in the description box. We can become friends, talk about books, horrifying books, thrilling books, romance books, and manga, all that good fun stuff. And with that being said, I hope you are having a great day, night, morning, afternoon, wherever you are, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!